So I guess if everybody's been able to see the agenda in the meetings chat, I guess a brief overview of all the tools that are being used would be, so we're using just standard stuff like Git and Gitea so that we can revise our, see all the revisions of our code that builds all these VMs and infrastructure. And then we're also using Ansible to automate our IT tasks. So like configuring IP addresses, username and passwords, and DNS records or stuff like that. And then using Packer and Terraform. So Packer would be creating the VMs from scratch, and then using Terraform to take those Packer images and deploy them in such a way that they're evenly distributed for all the teams. So they'll end up with the exact same environment for each team, which is what we want. And we are using other technologies, but those are the biggest ones that come to mind right now. And then just an overview of the environment infrastructure. So I'll share my screen for this to be able to easily show you. Everybody can see my screen, right?
Yes, we got it.
Perfect. We have VMware with vCenter and vSphere. So we have a total of 4 computing hosts right now, currently, and vSphere aggregates it so that we can talk to them all at once as if they were one system, and we're using that so that we can distribute the team VMs onto different servers and be able to maximize performance for each team. So they'll have the best experience possible. And then some of our virtual infrastructure would be, let's see, our Git server. It's running Gitea, and actually we can see it right here. So right here, we have various repositories of all of our infrastructure and stuff related to the club, yeah, it takes care of our building the VMs as well as deploying the VMs in for the I guess you could call it a production environment, but the practice environment. And then going back, so the next one would be drone, which is our build pipe, which basically anytime we'll configure a repository from Gitea in drone, so that anytime we push to a specific configured repository in Gitea, that drone will immediately start building whatever we pushed. So an example would be our Linux FTP VM. So if I wanted to rebuild this VM right now, we could see in vSphere, probably in like 20 seconds, that it'll initialize a clone of the initial template image, and then it'll start executing commands once it's reached a state where it can actually connect and SSH in, and then it'll start executing the commands, and it'll save it, and it'll archive it. So you can see here that it's actually started cloning the VM, and you can see that here. And the actual VM is located, let's see, right here. So it just created this, and as soon as this gets an IP address, it'll actually start executing our Ansible commands. And for that particular build, our Ansible commands are stored right here. So, and this also shows the state of the drone build. So, for example, in our roles and build tasks, tasks in Ansible are just various steps that you need to execute. It's just a command. So like for create users, this is one task, and it basically what this one in particular does is it adds admin users from this variable. So, and then it'll complete all these tasks. So as you can see here, it was able to reach get an IP address and then connect, and it's just starting to execute all of our commands now. You can also see the previous repositories and yeah, see the build history behind that. Going on. Oh, where was I? Shoot. Oh yeah. And then moving on to one of our last infrastructure components is what I call build box, which is a virtual machine that hosts all the software that is capable of completing all these tasks. So that's where Packer and Terraform is installed. Also Ansible. So I'm actually SSH'd in right now, and I'll be showing you more of that later. But that's the main gist of it. Any questions so far, or comments? Going too fast, too slow?
I think you're doing okay. But so BuildBox is what you guys use to build things. It just has all the software on, and you know that it's got everything that you need, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So actually, drone goes into BuildBox, and that's what actually creates or executes Packer, which goes back to VMware and starts cloning it. So here, we'll push code to our Git instance, and once the Git repository is configured, drone will automatically start building, and it'll SSH into BuildBox and starts executing the code that's in the repository. As soon as the VM is cloned and started, Packer initiates a remote connection that ultimately lets Ansible provision our VM with like vulnerable configuration files, set security holes in the firewall, add miscellaneous users, stuff like that. And then as soon as all of those tasks are done, we shut down the server, and it'll package up the VM, and depending on the configuration, it'll package it up into a template, or it'll just leave it there. And then once we have all of our production templates for an environment, so to deploy one environment, we call that a scenario, because typically with CCDC at least, you'll have a theme that these machines are built around. So for our solution, we have a scenario repo that, and in our case, we have it about healthcare. So we have healthcare repository VMs that have customizations towards that kind of environment. And then as soon as all these, like you execute the Terraform command to actually deploy all this stuff, and then once it's done building, you ultimately visit the dashboard. You hand out credentials to teams, and it's off to actually doing the competition or practice environment or whatever. So I guess that's just a general overview. I mean, there are other things that I could go through, but we have, yeah, I've tried to make the documentation as explanatory for each step that you need as possible for these generic scenarios. So
yeah, it's pretty good too. I've been going through it, loading some of the VMs, and it's pretty well explained, and the pictures help a lot too.
And yeah, I've tried to include references as well. So I guess that's the build and deployment process for our environment. Going back to the agenda. So before this meeting, I deployed a 3-team version of this healthcare environment. So I'll just show that to you right now. Let's see. Or actually right here. So ultimately we'll have a DNS record for this, but right now it's just at this IP address. And any teams can go to this IP address, and they'll select this score stack space. And this is the scoring engine for the whole environment. So you go to dashboard, and you'll see for scoreboard, okay, wow. All the teams have the exact same points, and FTP service is down. And I can show you why it's down and how we can activate it. So as well as other things you can do in the dashboard. So since I'm logged in as the administrator, I can change different variables about the checks. So like for this host this FTP1 service for team 1, I can see, oh, it's using this IP address to score that that service. So if I were to actually SSH into this server, so we're in Team 1's environment for the FTP1 scored service, and if we place a file that it's looking for, so if you go back to here and you see the file, it's looking for test, and we just make the file there, and we look at the logs. You can see that ScoreStack is trying to attempt to download this, but it wasn't there, but now it is. So you'll see it takes like 20 or 30 seconds each time it checks. But going back, as you can see, now we're earning points for Team 1. So, yeah. So, the login for each of the teams. So if we were to log in as a team, we would see a bit different results for what we can modify, at least. So, so these are just randomly generated passwords. And so we can see all the teams still, and also the history of it. But you can see for what we can modify, we can only modify the password for this FTP service, even though that's not the only thing they're scored for, and they have a lot more parts to the actual service that's being scored. They can see what passwords are already set and set a new password, so just random password. You can see it's updated, and this should fail the service now since it can't log in properly. But yeah, that's what the team looks like. Let's go back. And eventually we'll see that FTP1 will go down again, and it'll actually give a little message of what why it's failing. So we could also go to Team 2 and see that message. Or maybe not. I haven't tried that before, but in our admin dashboard, we can see it. Could not retrieve file. So, and then, so actually, another point to bring up about this is that we can do many kinds of services. So right now, these are just ICMP. So it just checks if the host is responding to ICMP, and then this FTP is just FTP. But we can do a lot more services like DNS or LDAP, POPS3 or IMAP, a whole bunch of different services. But these were the easiest to set up. So. And then as for the actual user experience for teams competing, so aside from this dashboard, they'll actually log into our vCenter, or actually, they'll log into our vCenter server, and they'll only see the VMs that are specific to their team. So they'll only be able to see these teams VMs. So this right now is a Linux VM, but this could be their domain controller. This is their router for their actual environment. So all the traffic's being routed, and you can see that the automation set up all these routes and named the networks. And this could be a Windows 10 client, but it's not right now. That's to be developed later. Yeah, so this is what each team will see. And then, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much everything for the actual deployed environment. So I can. Would you guys like to see actual deployment of the environment, or is there some other questions that you would like to bring up right now?
Yeah, what would a student need to do at their end to be able to access this off campus or on campus?
Yeah, so right now we don't have a way for them to sign up, but basically what we're planning is they'll ask somebody from the club environment administration. So they'll need to get onto the club environment Slack or Discord. They'll contact somebody in the club environment, and then we will create a LDAP account for them so that they can, one, LDAP or VPN into this environment, and two, be able to have credentials to log into all these other resources. So like we'll have other resources like a gaming server. So like right now we have Minecraft, and so they can just hang out and do whatever. But they can also try to hack other servers that we have on. So.
And is there a way to make sure that these are UVU students when they are doing that, not just somebody who is trying to gain access to this environment who may not be affiliated?
So there is not a good way of being able to determine whether they are a UVU student or not. We did have the option of connecting up to UVU's LDAP infrastructure, but we ultimately dismissed that because if for some reason somebody was able to find
A way out?
Yeah, a way out, or find some of the LDAP credentials to that LDAP server for UVU. We don't want that to happen, so we just have our own free IPA LDAP server just for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that initially we wanted to do that, but we decided ultimately that the risks were, they didn't outweigh the benefits. I guess if there isn't anything else, I can show you deploying the environment from scratch. So, and again, interrupt me if you have any questions or would like to say something else. So right now we'll need to destroy the environment that we have already up. And basically it lists out all the scored services and our templates and IP addresses and all this stuff that makes the environment work. Oh, there's another thing that I should show you as soon as this is up, is that this will actually create a network map of the environment to give to the teams. So you can see here that there's a setting called system visibility chance, which means that there's a 70% chance that this will show up on the network map. And this is to simulate, like, oh, the administrator or intern forgot to log the system in the documentation, so they don't actually know about it. So once we start deploying this again, I'll be able to show you the automatically generated network map. There we go. So now we'll need to modify the variables file. And we'll just deploy 2 teams. And then we'll actually apply these changes to the environment. So we call Terraform apply with the variables file that has all of our variables for the scenario we're deploying. And then we type yes and start creating all of this. So as you can see right here, this is creating the network map, and you can see here that it completed after 2 seconds. So if we go right here and copy that over, so over to my local machine, and let's see, copy this network diagram image over. And open it up. Here we go. So this is, it doesn't look particularly good, but it's much better than nothing. So this is the network that teams would each get. So basically it's all the fundamental information they'll need. So this will include the operating system that it runs. They can, whoever's deploying this environment can choose how much they want to give away. So it could just say Windows, or it could say Windows 2008 R2 Service Pack 2 or whatever. And then you can choose DNS records that you want, as well as the host name. So those don't have to be the same. And then what sort of services are on them, not necessarily what's scored. And then what sort of IP address that this VM is under. And these are all the 3 networks that we deploy right here. So, yeah. If we go back and look at the deployment, this takes about 20 minutes, or sorry, 10 minutes since the start. So we're about a quarter of the way through. But yeah, is there any questions, or yeah.
I guess you're just kind of hanging on for a second while this runs.
Mm-hmm.
So can we get into how well is the club managing all of this information and rolling it over to new students as the older students move on? I mean, I appreciate this demonstration. I see Nicholas here, but are you guys ready? I mean, what can we do as a department to help make sure that that goes smoothly?
I guess I think the best solution would be to routinely check up on what sort of progress we're making as a club on the club environment. So it's not particularly burdensome on either the faculty, because they already have, I'm sure you guys already have a lot to do. And we don't want to make it particularly more burdensome. So I think routinely checking up and making sure that we're making progress on this environment would be the best solution.
Nicholas, do you have anything to add?
Just that we have a lot of exciting stuff planned. So I know that Dallin already talked a little bit about the healthcare challenge. We're also setting up we're planning to set up some more realistic scenarios too. So like a business, Dallin even talked about potentially doing something with satellites. So setting up an environment that simulates different satellites, and we can try to hack into that. So there's just a lot of nice stuff we can do with this. Once we get it set up, we can also pass that down to other generations. So the hardest part is just getting it up right now, and then maintaining it will be a little bit easier after that.
It looks fantastic. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to be able to actually see this functioning so well. Yeah, this environment has been built so that the hardest part is actually developing the infrastructure that is actually running all of this. But now that it's all running and we have pretty good documentation and just all the software there already tested, maintenance of it and development is going to be a lot smoother and easier comparatively to actually generating all of this from scratch. So. And also, if the club or some other entity decide that we should publicly release some of these repositories that build these VMs, these vulnerable VMs, we could pretty easily do it. So if we decide to release this Terraform repository, anybody with a VMware setup could, in theory, deploy this. Of course, they'd still need to have internet and some certain networks configured and set up, but for the most part, everything is dynamic enough that it'll be able to build everything itself. So it should be able to easily be replicated on other machines as well. And yeah, so like you can see right here, these are the permissions so that different teams can see their own particular team VMs. Now setting up the score stack instance so that you can see the scoring engine and as well as the passwords that are generated. So yeah. And getting back to this, yeah, so other improvements that we have planned for this, the club is also thinking of using the infrastructure to host something we call Saturday Sparring, which is just a sort of hang out and hack kind of meetup, whether it's virtual or in person. And basically, you'll have the participants will be given a set of VMs, and they'll be vulnerable in nature, and they're given they can use any method available to them to try to exploit for them. And once they're in, it's a style called King of the Hill, where once they're in, they'll want to keep other people out from so that they can gain the most points and quote unquote win that Saturday Sparring. And as well, other improvements. So we got a donation from DigiCert a while ago, and we actually just received the actual server that was used by that donation, so to be able to improve this environment. So we'll be able to offload some of the overhead to this new server and be able to build and develop and deploy VMs much faster. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I had planned. So we can just wait for this to complete.
While we're waiting, Mohammed, I know you've worked with something similar, you know, building these consistent systems. I don't know if you've got any feedback on this, but we could hear that.
Well, first of all, I lost my Bluetooth headset, so if my voice seems a little bit hollow, just excuse me for that. I think, I like the automation for the setup. I like, what I'm seeing. I need to just play with it, and maybe, and actually, what I was thinking, that we can use the club to create some vulnerable VMs for the different classes we teach, where we can tailor some of the components of the VMs, so we can use it, even so students in the different classes can get their hands-on experience on some of these vulnerable VMs that we create through the club. Any thoughts, Basil, or Dallin?
Yeah, Mohammed, I'm right there with you on this one. I know I teach web application security in particular. And for that, I build my own virtual machines with busted web applications. And it would be nice if we have within this environment something that has an e-commerce website that is busted, that has several web application weaknesses that students could leverage and exploit. That makes a lot makes it way easier for us rather than us building these, and having every student has his own environment at their end, to have this as at a central location like this. So it would be great if we could incorporate something within this environment for our students to go after. Brings a lot of efficiency and scale.
I'm torn, Basil, because I think it's important for students to learn how they can build, a system in a virtual environment. Like, for example, we have the server hardening environment where I go in and make them download CentOS, an older version, and learn how to, build it up, and then start running some scans on it. I'm finding the vulnerabilities and the services that are well known to be a problem, and then they go in and stop these services. So, I mean, I'm torn between the experience that the students gain, at the same time having that fast system that can enable students to run the different assignments with ease, and focus on the assignment than just focus their time on building the system. So I think we have a nice, it will be a very good addition if we can have access to it in the classroom.
So what we could also do is we could give them access to the actual Git instance, so they themselves develop their own VMs. So right here, I have where is it? A vulnerable template that people just clone. So you click use this template, and basically
give it a name.
Yeah, they just choose a name, and they can make it private or public. CentOS e-commerce site or something like that, and they can clone the Git content of this template, and there. Now I have a repository set up with all the default files, and they can modify it to their heart's content.